If the words Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi don't trigger some sort of instinctive joy and make you unconsciously grin, then we can't be friends. Bitch. The series aired on Cartoon Network from 2004 to 2006, and I fucking loved it. Yumi is best girl hands down, shouts out to Ami, but you can't touch perfection. According to my family, when the series was airing, I'd always scream the title really fast and sing the theme all the time, almost like I had some sort of social disorder. I'm saying this to say that my parents shouldn't have been surprised when I became a weeb in high school. All the signs were there. The series is loosely based on the J-pop band Puffy Amiyumi, who you probably know from the Teen Titans theme. I remember liking Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed a lot more than the first. And that's not just because of the Y2K house that the gang lived in, or my massive childhood crush on Linda Cardellini, but because Friends Forever by Puffy Amiyumi, my favorite song of theirs, played during both the movie and the end credits. You love to see it. When I found this album in a secondhand store a couple years back, with both Friends Forever and the Teen Titans theme on it, I needed it for the collection. Fuck paying rent, J-pop is more important. Hi Hi is actually the band's second series. Originally, they had a Japanese variety show from 97 to 2002, which apparently had guest appearances from Sylvester Stallone and Harrison Ford. I initially wanted to find footage online, but it was difficult to find any, and plus, I feel like it'd be disappointing compared to my imagination of what a Puffy Amiyumi and Harrison Ford collaboration would fucking be. I am so off fucking track. Okay, in the animated series, the band would occasionally make an on-screen appearance, but for the most part, it was a standard animated series about a duo that's barely based on the real musicians. And they had standard episode topics to go along with it, like having stalkers, hunting down children and stealing from them?
We gotta fix this tire fast. Who knows what they might try to suck out of us next?
What the fuck? While other Cartoon Network series have had their fair share of representation in video games, ranging from solo adaptations to a handful of crossover games, Puffy Amiyumi isn't one of them. It, like most other mid to late 2000s Cartoon Network properties, were severely underrepresented in gaming. Which is a total lie, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Yeah, fuck Squirrel Boy, fuck my gym partner's a monkey, fuck Juniper Lee, and especially fuck Duck Dodgers. That sick little sack of shit of a man. Yeah, somehow amidst all of its merchandise, Puffy Amiyumi got 3 separate games. Sort of. You'll see. Fans of the series are probably wondering why I didn't end up covering any of the Flash games in this video, and that's very simple. It's because I don't want to lose my sanity. I already have a very big video on the horizon. 3 is already enough of games. Like, what else do you want from me? Feels like I stumble upon a website that's gonna lead to a snuff film. Puffy PS I Love You is a game that released for the PlayStation 1 in 1999. This is the odd one out, partly because it's based off of the band itself and not specifically the animated series, but also because I can't tell you what this game really is. One half of it is music videos and live performances that have just been bit crushed to shit. You can edit some of them, the game says, but it's basically just shifting in between different camera angles, which is honestly cool. So naturally, I just began to shift between the cameras as fast as I can because I'm a spastic with a broken sense of humor. The rest of the content is just shooting mini games. One where you can only hit certain cans, which is basically just Fruit Ninja, only like 10 years earlier, and another where you shoot lockers in order to find rolls of film that unlock Polaroids of the band's tour in this photo album. Both of these were made with the gun con in mind, and while the locker one isn't that bad, playing the can one with sticks is kind of a fucking nightmare. And that's all there really is to this game. I promise you, there's nothing else whatsoever. This kind of just feels like a physical copy of a website that you control with a DualShock. It's a niche of a niche that would only be made in the specific time period of the late 90s. The thing that really ties this whole thing together is Puffy Amiyumi's music. If you're not into Puffy, or at the very least 90s Japanese rock pop fusion, then this isn't your thing whatsoever. Hell, I love their music and I'm still not sure what to make of this. But hey, if you're into finding obscure PlayStation 1 games that aren't really games, then go nuts. I'm at least glad that it introduced me to some of the band's older tracks. Yep, still funny. Kaznapped is a GBA exclusive 2D platformer that was published by D3 in 2005, a company that you might know for their antics to say the least. The game itself was developed by Ultron, a Japanese developer that's kind of made a name for itself adapting cartoons to handheld consoles, with games like the GBA releases of Simpsons Road Rage and Atlantis Scorpantis. That's the level that we're dealing with here. Doesn't help that the very first thing you see when you boot up this game is flashing lights. What the fuck is it with licensed games and trying to give kids epileptic seizures? The story itself is very simple, regardless of whether you've seen the show or not. Ami and Yumi's obsessive fan Harmony kidnaps their manager Kaz and goes on tour with him as her hostage. So you chase her through different countries trying to save Kaz. Very straightforward. If you have seen the show, then there's lots of fun Easter eggs that are nice to see. Both Ami and Yumi's pet cats serve as a health item, where you pet them and you receive either additional health or an extra life. Very, very cute. After each level, you fight a boss on the way to the next location, and since this isn't an action series like the Powerpuff Girls with an ongoing antagonist or anything, each of the bosses are just random characters who were just kind of douchebags in their respective episodes. Like this greedy banker who tried to buy a man's farm, or this UFO from episode 8. Most of the standard enemies are robot versions of Kaz, or superfans and paparazzis that you could perform for, temporarily stunning them. Although hitting them causes you to lose points, which is kinda dumb since these guys are just accosting and attacking these women. Wow, game, how oddly victim blamey of you. Just wait until Twitter gets a hold of this. Your ass is grass. This mechanic definitely feels like it was coded by somebody who reads the ugly bastard tag. You sick fucks.
I can't work like this. These headphones are useless. I can't hear a thing. Gomenasai.
Coming up next, it's Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi on Cartoon Network.
As a game, Kaznapped is very easy. You spend majority of your time solving puzzles as you switch between both Yumi and Ami, since each of them had their own advantages, which is what you would expect in a game like this. Yumi's got heavier attacks and can break and move objects, while Ami just kinda jumps higher and can swing from hooks. The game straight up has a line that implies that Ami is too weak to fight. I'm not a fan of that. Like, even her attack animations are just her shoving the guy away while Yumi is just going straight fucking combat mode. There's something in the subtext there that somebody could unravel that I really don't feel like doing right now. The puzzles whittle down to moving boxes or hitting switches, which would get really old if the missions weren't so short. Can't say the same for the boss battles though, since they have gigantic health bars and you have to press the button each and every time to shoot at them, ruining all of that side-scrolling shooter charm. As repetitive as this game can get after the first hour, it's a very simple and cute game that's kind of reminiscent of the show's many Flash games. Out of the 3 games I played for this video, Kaznapped was the one that I played the most. If you love the show and are willing to take the 2 seconds it takes to download an emulator, then it's worth playing. I don't know why, but Harmony is sailing for Slovakia made me laugh way too fucking much. Looking back, it's kind of surprising that the first 2 games based on the duo weren't rhythm games, especially since the PS1 had tons of notable rhythm titles like DDR and Parappa, and even the Game Boy Advance began the Rhythm Heaven series, so you'd expect something in that caliber. But somehow we ended up with a minigame collection and a side-scroller, at least that was until 2007, when D3 and Sensory Sweep, known for making the Alvin and the Chipmunks game, decided to make Genie and the Amp. Except, it isn't a fucking rhythm game, son of a bitch! No, instead we got a 2.5D beat 'em up that has one notable mechanic, which I'll explain in a minute. Hello, this is Pizza Dad from the editing bay. I rarely ever do this. As I was finding footage for Alvin and the Chipmunks, I found a trailer that was a dancing game and I was like, okay, that's fine. Turns out that was for Chipwrecked. So I looked up footage of the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie game that was developed by Sensory Sweep, expecting to find like a 3D platformer or some random shit, and what do I find? A fucking rhythm game. They developed a rhythm game, but Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi gotta beat him up. Okay. You're telling me that Alvin and the Chipmunks got a fucking rhythm game before Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi? I couldn't live with this information in silence. I'm done. This game's story is about Ami and Yumi being in a bit of a creative rut, which I can totally identify with, good god. Only for a genie to help them get out of it because he's a big fan of their music, which is hilarious. It's very bare bones that, frankly, it's kind of stupid, but hey, you're not gonna see me complain about the story of a game based on a Cartoon Network show where the main characters talk about getting sucked. Gameplay initially seems very straightforward until you actually get to the combat. What sets Genie and the Amp apart from any other beat 'em up is that it was developed with the touchscreen and stylus in mind. To do certain attacks, you tap different strings on the touchscreen. There's even these short little pauses in between the attacks, presumably so the character can try to stay on some sort of beat. It's kind of like Hi-Fi Rush, just less flashy and a lot less satisfying. As is, it's already kind of a lackluster system. It doesn't feel good at all, and it's kind of weird to consciously think about what part of the screen to tap on when you're in the middle of a fast-paced boss fight, or when you're being attacked by a bunch of enemies. But the thing is, you don't have to use the touchscreen. Say for the start of each boss fight where you have to play a song, you can just mash the corresponding face button and get along just fine. However, thanks to those slow pauses in between the attacks and how long it takes to kill an enemy, it all still feels sluggish. Not to mention that the amount of enemies they throw at you at once is fucking insane. Look, I like beat 'em ups a lot, especially ones with nice visuals, but this gameplay is just very, very undercooked. Even the costumes are subpar. I'm a bitch for customization. Like, do you know how much you fucked up that I'm complaining about additional costumes, additional content in your fucking game? I like when games use their respective platforms' unique features as a way to distinguish themselves from their contemporaries. But this is just kinda ass! As a game, I kinda like Kaznapped a lot more. This is technically closer to what you'd expect from a Puffy Amiyumi game, given the fact that it at least tries to integrate the music part of the series, and it certainly looks a lot better. I love the DS's pixelated 3D that's reminiscent of the PlayStation 1. And the music here is way better than in Kaznapped. There's far less chiptune remakes and more original tracks for the game that capture the same vibe as the show, which is always great. But the Game Boy Advance game is a overall more solid experience. This is a game. The music, UI, and visuals are all on point, but it really feels like it's just lacking something, which led to me dropping it about an hour in. Even with just mashing buttons, the game feels slow as hell. You spend most of it going through what can only be considered an endurance test of random battles, just to lead up to a shitty boss fight that lasts no longer than 3 minutes, just like me in bed. I honestly don't know what I expected from this video. I had hoped that these games' level of quality would reflect that of the series, but despite just making a fucking television episode length video about TMNT games, I forgot about how so many licensed games can just be shovelware. I will say that for a show that only aired for a couple of years, the fact that we got 2 handheld titles alongside a handful of Flash games is good. It's especially disappointing that Puffy Amiyumi was never really integrated into any Cartoon Network spin-off games, like CN Racing or Punch Time. Save for some appearances in the CN City bumpers, which are great, it kind of feels like Cartoon Network never really counted it as one of their more memorable series. After the cancellation, it was like the series was just wiped from existence. Even the band's Friends Forever music video, which has the duo running around Japan with a terrifyingly accurate Scooby-Doo mascot that looks like it's going to eat my fucking soul, was considered lost media up until very recently because it wasn't on the internet. Mind you, Scooby-Doo is owned by the same company that owns Cartoon Network, that being Warner Brothers. Presumably, this is all kind of due to the licensing fees that would come with Puffy's music. Each episode includes at least 3 songs from them, and that's not counting the main theme, so I can't imagine putting the work into an entire console game where it's the main focus, meaning that you'd have to renew those licenses every year it was still available. Still, as Cartoon Network continues to cash in on 90s and 2000s nostalgia, I'd really like to see a smaller development studio try to make a game based on the show in the vein of DDR or even Rock Band. After the series' cancellation, the duo would go on to have another Japanese reality series, this time named Hi Hi Puffy Boo. I guess it's supposed to be a horror show? And series creator Sam Register would go on to become the president of Warner Bros. Animation. At least we know that that guy's got good taste. And Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi would become no more than a memory in the minds of those who watched it while it was on air. Well, the games might have been kinda shit, but at least the show's still a classic. What the fuck?
Proceed and check out your favorite episodes of Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi. Then sneak backstage for special bonus features like Totally Trivial Trivia on Volume 1. Plus music video karaoke and Japanese lessons on Volume 2. You can get Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi Volume 1 Let's Go and Volume 2 Rock Forever on DVD November 29th.